So my name is Hidy Lopez, Branch of Service Marine Corps, and then I made it to the rank of corporal, which is an E4. So, yep.
Oh, very cool. And would you please like to tell us something about your background, where you're from, and all that?
Absolutely. So I'm a Kansas City native. I was born on the Missouri side, but I grew up on the Kansas City side. I actually went to Shawnee Mission North, which is pretty close to here to JCCC. My family, a little bit of history, they're actually all immigrants. They came here from Mexico to be able to get us a better life, and they did exactly that. I ended up joining the military, which I think they're really proud of, especially my grandpa. He has a huge Marine Corps emblem on his front door, so everybody knows. So Kansas native, and then when I was at high school, I got exposed to just different military stuff, which really inspired me to join. And that's actually transitioned into why I joined. Something really cool that Shawnee Mission North has, they have a NJRTC program. The person that was in charge was a former drill instructor, Marine Corps drill instructor. And I remembered him yelling at us and push-ups and sit-ups and running. And we'd be there at 5 in the morning, which what high schooler wants to be at high school at 5 in the morning? Nobody but me. I wanted to be there. And I realized that I could do it. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can join the Marine Corps. And it kind of just lingered in the back of my mind through like 9th grade, 10th grade. Like it just kind of lingered through high school. But I was always kind of doubtful, but I was like, maybe I should do it. But yeah, it was because of that. I was like, maybe I should.
Is that how you came to serve and you said the Marine Corps?
Yes.
He was a Marine Corps instructor?
He was a drill instructor, yes.
Okay.
So a drill instructor, for context. In boot camp, they have their drill instructors. They're already Marines that train future Marines. They're called recruits. And that's what he did while he was in the military. And I remember he was encouraging me. He's like, you're really physically fit. You could do this. And a recruiter, he was stopping by Shawnee Mission and a few other schools. They allow a recruiter sometimes to come in during like lunchtime and talk to people that, might be considering that path, that career. And I remember one of those lunch times, I saw somebody that had graduated from Shawnee Mission North. His name's Manford, and he was like, hey, how have you been, Hidy? And I was like, good. And he's like, you should join. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, what if I can't cut it? What if I can't make it? And he's like, just come to one of our workout sections. That's it. And so I was like, okay, I will. And I went to one of the PT sessions. The people that have already decided to join, they work out together once a week at the recruiting station. And I went and I outran all the guys. And I outpushed all the guys, and I set up all the guys. And I was like, maybe I can do this. I remember the recruiter, he's like, okay, we needed to get you in the Marine Corps. He's like, you can definitely do this. And I remember I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know. I really want to join the Navy. I was like, I want to be a nurse. And he's like, well, you could be a nurse in the Marine Corps. I was like, I don't know. So I went into the Navy office, spoke to the recruiter. And he was like, yeah, I can help you. He's like, but he's like, you have a metal plate in your arm. He's like, I need you to get me some paperwork saying that you can join the military with your metal plate. I was in a car accident. And I was like, okay. I'm 17. I don't know how to do any of that. I'm barely an adult. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, if you don't get that, then you can't join. And the Marine Corps recruiter had overheard. He like sticks his head out of his office and he's like, I'll get the paperwork for you. Come into my office. And so sure enough, I went into the office. He got the paperwork. And within less than a week, I was signed up, ready to go, contract in. And I was headed to the processing station to join the Marine Corps. And I was in within a month. I was already signed up, and I just had to wait to graduate to join. So it all started because in JRTC, a recruiter at the lunch table and kicking butt at a workout, which I didn't think I could do. I'm 5'2". I normally can't outrun most men that are taller than me, but I did that day. So, but yeah, that's going to happen. I'm not in that shape now, though, thanks to my 2 kids, but that's okay.
That's okay. And so where is boot camp for you?
Great question. So I joined back in 2008. Nowadays, now in 2024, it doesn't matter. You can go to either Parris Island or San Diego. But back in 2008, it was still women only went to Parris Island. So I went to Parris Island, and it was Whew, it was a shock. I'm a Kansas native, and I know we know humidity. That is a different humidity. That's like you took a shower and it still sticks to you kind of humidity. So I was at Paris Island. I left in June of 2008. I arrived. I remember it was dark, just dark. And I was like, did I make the right decision? I was nervous on the plane, like, moving my hands, nervous that I made the right choice. But I got there, and the first thing, I'm sitting in the bus, and yelling starts happening. A female drill instructor comes onto the bus, and she's like, okay, everybody get out of this bus right now, and I can't deny it. I'm like, what is happening? In my head, of course, I'm not saying anything out loud. Following instructions, I'm getting out of the bus. She's then yelling to get on these yellow steps, on these yellow footprints. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And I stand there, and she's like, okay. And then she filed us in, had us sit down, and everything began from there. Lots of yelling. And that first day was a blur. My poor mom, she says she remembers that she got a call in the middle of the night. She's like, it was 2 or 3 in the morning here, Kansas time, Kansas local time. And that she said she could hear my voice, that it was tired and raspy from yelling, but that I read off a prompt of some kind saying, my name is so-and-so, and I have arrived safely to Paris Island. You will be contacted by letter through the mail. If you don't get one, this is the number you can reach. I am safe. Thank you. Bye-bye. Click. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, she says that she was crying and all this. And I'm like, I didn't know. I just read the paper and then I followed the instructions. But yeah, did boot camp. For those that don't know, it's a 3-month boot camp. It still is 12 weeks. I liked it. I think the reason why is because of NJROTC. I was used to that yelling. I was used to that physical intensity. So I actually started out as the guide, which is pretty good. What a guide does is they're the leader of, they hold a guide on, which is a very big, almost like a flagpole kind of thing that you hold, and it has a banner on it representing your platoon number. And it was just an honor to be able to do that. And I loved it. I loved the yelling. I loved the organization. I'm very organized still. I loved that it was physically demanding and that I was able to keep up. It was still difficult, though. Even though I was in really good physical shape, they still pushed you mentally, physically. It was still hard being away from family. It was a group of people that I had never met ever in my entire life. I like naps. There was no more naps. I like sleeping in. There was no more sleeping in. You woke up. My husband's also a Marine Corps veteran, and even today in our house, we warn each other when we're going to turn on the lights, and we say lights, and that way we know that we're going to turn the lights on. So again, there's just parts of us that it still stays, but boot camp was one of a kind. And I remember the hardest part, I actually got injured. So in boot camp, it's broken into different phases. If you can imagine your initial phase, they're breaking you down. They're teaching you not to be an individual. They want you to be a part of a team. Like, for example, you and me, that if I step left, you step left. If I step right, you step right. If you duck, I duck. And the reason for that is when we're a cohesive team, we can protect each other better. We can think the same. But if we're each still individuals, something can happen that can go wrong and miscommunications happen. So they really try to teach you, hey, if you do this, there's consequences to everyone. So that's the first piece of it. The second piece, they start instilling Marine Corps knowledge. They start teaching you about our history. They start teaching you about our customs and courtesies and our traditions, which are really big as Marines. I know there's lots of branches, but when you meet a Marine and 2 Marines meet each other, we're loud, we're rambunctious, and we immediately connect because it is a brotherhood. It is a sisterhood because, like I said, you're no longer one person, you're a group. And then the last part of that, again, boot camp, is that you do the crucible. And I got hurt during the crucible. I'll never forget, the crucible is a long, I think it's 36 hours. I apologize, the numbers are missing, but it's very long. But it's an endurance test of everything that you did. There's hiking, there's rappelling, there's fire maneuver at nighttime, you're low crawling, there's pretend gunfire, there's just a lot of stuff going on and you're super tired, super hungry. Well, on one of the obstacle course, I remember I was climbing up and it was raining, pouring rain. And on the top of the log, because you had to shimmy up and then flip over, and I flipped over and I landed on my hip. It was excruciating. And I'll never forget, my drill instructor came over to me and she's like, all right, Aguilar. I'm like, yeah, and that's my maiden last name. I was like, yes, ma'am. And she's like, you have two choices here. I can put your hip back into place and you can keep pushing and you are almost there and you will be a Marine at the end of this. She said, or I can take you to the med platoon. They can see you over. They can help you out. You'll be on recovery, but I can't guarantee when or if you'll become a Marine. She's like, the decision is completely yours. And I remember looking her in the eye and I said, no, I'm going to finish this. And looking back now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that courage came from. I don't know how I thought I could push through the pain. It was very painful. And sure enough, I remember gritting my teeth and I heard a pop as she put my hip back. And I just kept going. I was limping the rest of the way, but I kept going. And I was never more, which I know we should be humble, but I was never more proud when I got my Eagle Globe and Anchor at the end. Because to me, it was like, I did earn it. Because it's not that I just accomplished boot camp. It's that I chose that through the pain, through the trial, and through the injury, that wasn't going to stop me from becoming a Marine. And that was hard because even today, my hip still clicks. It still pops. It still hurts. Even when I carried my kids, this is the one that's injured. So when I carried my 1-year-old, I do this hip because this hip doesn't last as long. Like I put him there. And then after like about 10 minutes, I'm like, I can't. And then I switch him to this hip. So yeah, there's long-term consequences. But in the end, it's like, it's one of the moments that I realized I can accomplish anything in life. That if I could push through that hurt and broken to become a Marine, then, I can do anything. Now I'm a nurse now. I'm a mom now. Like there's just so much that I can accomplish. But yeah, that was boot camp. It was very painful.
Wow.
But yeah.
I can only imagine. Were there any other challenges that you want to talk about or that you faced or that you didn't expect?
Specifically, a moment of laughter that I can definitely talk. I don't know if it was a real challenge. My mom, who I do love, she, during that time, we get letters while you're in boot camp. And she sent me a letter that had music in it, and I didn't know this. And so I remember getting the letter. It was Sunday. We got the letter, and I opened the piece of mail, and the whole barracks, the whole thing, it just fills with music. And I close the card as fast as I can. Too late. My drill instructor already heard it. And so she really funny, and I still remember her deep throaty voice of like, good. So you want to get a card that has music in it. And I'm like, oh, no. And so I'll never forget, that was the day that I got, it's called IT, it's called intensive training. You do it in the middle of the squad bay. There's just an open space where they do IT, and it really does build discipline and endurance. It does make you stronger, but man, it makes you sweat and it makes you want to cry sometimes. And I remember I got IT'd in the middle of the squad bay, and I was like, I never want another card with music. So after that, I was dripping in sweat. My hands were trembling because, I did burpees, I did push-ups, I did crunches, I did running in place, I did jumping jacks. She just nonstop kept going, and she's just like, it's because you're dancing to the music, you're dancing to the music. And I was like, no, ma'am, I don't want music anymore. By the time we were done, which it felt like eternity, it was probably 15, maybe 20 minutes, but it felt really long, felt like an hour. I remember sitting back down, and I sat down and immediately wrote to my mom, don't ever send me a card with music again. And I said, this is what happened. And my mom never sent me a card with music again. But yeah, that was, it taught me that you can't take anything for granted. My mom was just being the beautiful woman that she is. And I love music, but that kicked my butt. That was the one. And to make it harder, my drill instructor had me go inside, and then there's a sand pit outside. And that's what Parris Island is known for, is the sand pits and the sand fleas, which they get in your hair, they get in your skin, all over you always want to scratch, but you can't. That's a lack of discipline. You have to stand at the position of attention, even if you can feel them everywhere. And so she had me go outside and do some IT, then come inside, then go outside, then come inside. That was part of the running back and forth. And I'll never forget, I was just like, I never want to hear a musical card again. And to this day, now when I, like at Hallmark or Target, and I open a card because I'm looking for a card for someone, I always get my mom a musical card for birthdays. Always. And I always remember when I open one, it's like that memory's ingrained that it's like, musical cards have both a positive and a little bit of a negative association of like, I don't like musical cards. So yeah, but my mom, she laughs every year, every birthday, I get her a musical card, and she knows why. So but yeah, that's just a unique thing to my experience that it just still makes me smile today when I'm at Target.
Wow, that's really funny too, by the way.
Yes.
So then, what else is next after boot camp?
Yes.
What were the next things?
Great question. So after boot camp, I did something a little different. Most people after boot camp, they go straight to the second portion, which is MST. Well, I'm breaking down MCT, excuse me. So it's the Marine training. So after you've become a Marine at boot camp, you then go to, as a Marine, you finish some more training. Normally it's related to specifics of like leadership traits. I remember there was education on being a leader, how to manage, more Marine Corps history as well. Also physical endurance as well. There was a really long hike there that, we got blisters and everything. But that's the second step. But I had a little break in between the two. I actually decided to go home because I wanted to see my family, and I did recruiter's assistance for a little bit. So what that is that during that transition time, because it took a while before the next class started for that Marine Corps combat training, I decided to stay home, do recruiting assistance, and be able to help the recruiter, their local Marine Corps recruiter here in Overland Park, to recruit future Marines. And the reason why that's so relevant is I actually ran into, again, going to Shawnee Mission North, I ran into somebody, his name's Bobby Sherrill, who also was at Shawnee Mission North, and I did the same thing that happened to me to him. He was at the school. He wasn't sure. He was thinking about it. I convinced him to come to a PT session, and years later, and he joined, and he's out as well. But it was just cool that it really is just how we continue that tradition that as Marines, there's this sense of pride and, like I said, brotherhood, that it's like, I want you to be part of this. And he felt that. And now we get to talk and be like, oh, do you remember? And years later, and we still have that story. So that's what's unique. And of course, I got to see my family, which is good. And then I went to the Marine combat training. It was very intense. It was different than boot camp, though, since you are a Marine. There's not as much yelling because they're not trying to build you up. They're trying to treat you as an equal because you're all Marines. But there's still people that are in charge of you. So I remember something that was a little challenging there for me.
Is it still located in
Great question. Oh, great clarification. So it's actually next to it. It's in Camp, it's next to Camp Lejeune. What is it? Camp Geiger, I think? No. Oh, it's blinking. I think it's Camp Johnson. Sorry, my brain has to think a while. It's been a while since 2008 and 2009. And so you would go there and they do that training. It's not for long. The part that I specifically remember from there that was really hard, there was a lot of test taking of the knowledge that you were learning about leadership, the Marine Corps knowledge, and I wasn't the best test taker, unfortunately. And I remember that I was in the position of leadership there, that I was the guide, and I lost that position because I didn't pass one of the tests. That was really hard for me. To me, I wasn't the type of person to like not succeed at stuff that I put my mind to, but it definitely was a humbling reflection that it's like, hey, that's not your strength right now and you need to work at it. And then in the future, you'll see how that'll play into my Marine Corps career. And then during that time, though, something that I did overcome, which was really impressive, we had a lieutenant that was in charge of us, and we did a very long hike. We did a 10-mile hike, gear and everything. That was long to me because I got short legs. And I remember he was like 6'2", maybe 6'4", and like my head came to like his waist or like the middle of his
And was
torso.
this integrated now?
Yes, it is integrated. Great question. Now we can, and we would even, the space was together. We would share space together, sleep in the same area, individual bags, but just like sleeping bags, but same room. Great question. But he was our leader, and I'll never forget, I couldn't keep up with his pace. Like one of his strides was like 4 of mine, and I was like trying to keep up. And I was out of breath and I was tired. But I remember looking to my left, and the person that was the guide, because again, I lost the title because I hadn't passed that test. She was struggling, and I was like, no, like we can do this. And I remember I just kept telling myself, for every 1 step he takes, take 4, count them. And that's all I did during the hike is I counted his steps and my 4. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. The whole hike. And I made it through, which I didn't think I would with his long, long legs. And I'll never forget at the end of the hike, the guide, she said, she looked at me, she said, thank you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you're shorter than me, which I am. I'm pretty short, 5'2". And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I knew that if you could keep up with him, she's like, I'm taller than you. I have no excuse that if you could do it. She's like, so you reminded me that we are capable of doing this. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so it's just, you don't realize how, again, as Marines, you're just connected. And there's this thing that like, when you're suffering together. But as Marines, because you're suffering together, you can do it. You can overcome it because you're doing it as a whole, as a unit. And that was that moment that it helped me realize we're Marines. Like she relied on me without me even realizing it. I was able to motivate her and push her and help her to succeed just by having that inner motivation to be like, I can do this. I'm a Marine. I can do this. And it was just amazing to hear without knowing how that impacted her. So, but yeah, that's a little bit.
And how long was that training? Or what did you say the training was called again?
So I think it's MCT. I might be saying it wrong. Marine Combat Training. Am I saying it wrong? I might be. I don't know why. Like I said, it's been since 2008. It's been a while. All I know is that I know it has the word Marine in it because I remember I was like, I'm a Marine now. But if I remember correctly, it was anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 months. And I remember that because I went to MOS school, which that's after you're done with MCT, you go to MOS school, which is where you train specifically for the job that you signed your contract for. There's lots of different jobs in the Marine Corps. You could be, a sniper. You could be combat camera, take pictures in overseas. You could be supply, heavy equipment. There's a lot of different jobs. And so after that, I then went to MOS school, and that was a 3-month school. And I'm trying to think, was it in the same place? That was the hard part. I'm not going to lie. So the difficult part for me, unfortunately, is that boot camp, MCT, and my MOS school were pretty much in the same vicinity. They were all in South Carolina and North Carolina. So I get them confused because it's like, well, they were all next to each other. So it's like one big blob. But it's like I was in the Carolinas during this time. Like that's how I tell the story. But MOS school was right next to Camp Lejeune, I remember. And it was 3. Go ahead. You're going to. Yeah.
What was your MOS?
Yes. 0111. So that's an administrative specialist. So what I did is administrative work. So lots of like paperwork, documents, typing stuff up. I know that it sounds crazy, but there's a lot of paperwork that makes the Marine Corps run.
Can I ask what led you to select that MOS?
Absolutely. Yeah. So going back a little bit, I'm the first of my family to want to be able to go to college, first generation. Like I said, my family are immigrants. And I remember I wanted to go, but my mom, as a single mother, she couldn't afford it. And I remember that my recruiter specifically said, he's like, you can go to college while you're in the Marine Corps. And I was like, then I want a job that I can go to college while I'm in. And this was a job. He's like, if you are admin Marine, he's like, this will be your best bet to be able to pursue an education while you're active duty in the Marine Corps. Again, I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. I just signed the dotted line and was like, okay, I'll go to college. But that's why I chose that job, is I wanted a job that I could be able to pursue a degree, because it was important for me to be the first of my family to go to college. And so that's why I chose it. And plus I like typing, and I like doing like paperwork, and I'm really a little OCD and like color coordinated, and I like my pens a certain way. Anyways, but that's just little quirks about me. But yeah, that's why I actually chose it, is I feel I'm good with paperwork, but I needed something that would help me get my degree while I was in some kind of college degree. But yeah.
So earlier too, you mentioned that you wanted to be a nurse in the Navy. Did you just completely abandon that at last?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, so the Marine Corps doesn't have any health care. What that means is they don't have nurses, they don't have doctors, they don't have any healthcare profession. And so because of that, what happens, so you have the Navy, and then underneath the Department of the Navy is the Marine Corps. It's kind of like a subcategory. Even though it's its own branch, it falls underneath that department. So the way that works is, because of it, the Marine Corps, whenever we need a medical aid or medical attention, we use the Navy. What I mean that is the Navy has corpsmen, doctors, nurses, surgeons, technicians, radiology. They have everything in healthcare that you would think a hospital might have. Similar, so anytime that we need somebody, the Marines normally have a corpsman that's nearby. So unfortunately, even though I still never that changed. Unfortunately, that's something that the Marine Corps doesn't have. It was a MOS that wasn't offered. There was nothing in healthcare whatsoever. And so I knew that going in. But again, one thing that he did say, he's like, you can still become a nurse. He's like, you may not be a nurse while you're working. He's like, but you can work towards a degree while you're in the Marine Corps to become a nurse. And I was like, okay. I was like, then that's the middle ground that can work. So yes, I didn't completely abandon it, but again, unfortunately, it wasn't an option. It would have been nice to have been a nurse while I was in. But.
And how long was your MOS school?
Yeah, great question. So it was 3 months, and part of it was a lot of paperwork. Oh, my Lord. I learned how to type orders, DD-214s, travel reimbursement forms. I learned, goodness gracious, letter of appreciations. I learned awards, how to type up awards in the Marine Corps. If you get certain awards like a NAM, that has to be written up in the appropriate wording. When you get promoted, there's a specific certificate that's typed and printed. Yeah, it has to be written up. I learned other stuff such as how to place orders. So a lot of stuff, you place supply orders and have to do different stuff like that. That also requires an order. I also typed up unfortunately, I had to learn how to do bad stuff that when people get in trouble, like page 11s. If somebody gets in trouble, there's a proper Marine Corps order way to type out a page 11 that would explains why that Marine got in trouble, what the consequences are, what they can do. I typed up promotion warrants. Those are written a certain way. So it's just a lot of paperwork. And any admin Marine will tell you there's even more paperwork to learn. You specialize depending where you go as an admin Marine. There's a lot of possibilities. You can work in an S1 shop. That's like a unit has an S1 shop, and that Marine can work with that unit and do, like I said, letters of recommendation. They can do promotion warrants, stuff like that. You can work like at an IPAC. An IPAC can do like disbursement, pay, travel documents, orders to change duty stations, DD-214s to get out of the Marine Corps. It can even do paperwork like you retired or you got in trouble. So the list goes on and on.
I can only imagine.
And on. Yes. You got it. But yeah.
After you finished your MOS school, did you stay around in the North Carolina or?
I didn't. So I got really, really blessed. I had so when you're done with MOS school, you get options, quote unquote options. The reason I say that is they give you what's called like a wish list. I don't know if they still do it now in the Marine Corps, but they did in 2008. You put 3 options. You get to choose West Coast, East Coast, or overseas. And I remember I had put West Coast as my first choice. I had never gone to anywhere in the West Coast as a Kansas girl. Then I put overseas. I was like, it'd be so cool to be in Okinawa. It would be so cool to be overseas somewhere. And then last was East Coast because I was done with the Carolinas. I didn't want to be in the Carolinas anymore. There wasn't a lot to do. It's a great place, but not for me. And I got really blessed. I got West Coast, and I got stationed in California. And not only in California, I got Camp Pendleton, which for those that are Marines, that is a very nice base to be at. There's other places that are not so nice on the West Coast. And I loved it. I got stationed there at Camp Pendleton, California, in the 22 area. So 22 area, the base is divided into different areas numerically. That specific area was next to the air wing, and I got stationed with the IPAC unit, IPAC outbound. So the IPACs, remember how I was telling you that you can like belong to like an S1, belong to like an IPAC, belong to different areas. An IPAC, that specifically belongs to the base. So that's all.
You know what an IPAC stands?
I'm trying to remember. Something Intrapersonal Administration Center. What it is, though, the easiest way that Marines remember it, you can go there for all of your needs. It's one hub for everything. So on Camp Pendleton, they have an IPAC inbound. So that's for all the Marines that are arriving to the base. You have an IPAC outbound, which was for all the Marines that are leaving. Either they're getting out of the Marine Corps, they're retiring, or they're going to a new duty station. And then you had IPAC customer service, which they would just help you with like adding a dependent if somebody had a kid, updating their address, stuff like that, like little caveat administrative stuff. So I did IPAC outbound, which I really liked because outbound, Marines were leaving. What I mean by that is I got to do DD-214s. And I don't know if you've met a Marine that's ready to get out of the Marine Corps and they get their DD-214, but they're pretty darn happy if they want to get out. Those that don't and they got to get forced out, they're not happy and they were pretty mad. But the ones that were happy, I remember again, part of my job of giving them their DD-214, having them sign the line and everything and giving their copy and shaking their hand and said, thank you for your service. You're now in the IRR. It begins tonight at midnight. And you would see, we had all sorts. You had people hooting and hollering like, oh, I'm free, and like walking out. You had the other people like, thank you very much. And they would walk out silently. You had the extremes that would like rip off their blouse. They had their Marine Corps blouse and then they'd get in trouble. The reason why is because they were damaging the Marine Corps uniform and our gunny would come out and be like, hey, Marine, come here, and like yell them and bring them back in and say, you're still a Marine until midnight tonight. You better fix that uniform. And like they had to like fix themselves. So you had all sorts of people. And then of course you had the people that were actually sad that they were hesitant leaving the Marine Corps. I mean, you get a solid paycheck, you have a roof over your head, your stomach is fed, you've got insurance. To choose to go back to the civilian world, you had the people that were hesitant that it's like, should I get out? Like, am I really going to have a better life? And you're losing all your friends. Your friends are staying in or they're going back to their hometown. So I got to see a lot of people and I had a lot of fun doing it. So, but it was just cool, the hooting and harling and the high fives, and some people wanted selfies, which we were allowed to take selfies with them. So it was a lot of fun. But that's specifically what I did. I worked for IPAC Outbound. But as I mentioned, IPAC Outbound did a lot of stuff. It was 2 levels. You had the bottom level, which was they're getting the DD-214 and they're getting out. You had the top level, which was they were getting orders to a new duty station. And on the other side was the retirement side. That was for the Marines that had stayed in 20 plus years and they were getting out. I specifically worked for the Marines getting out after 4 or 8 years or 6 years, depending on their contracts. We did mostly enlisted. It was very rare to see officers. They had a different process. It was mostly enlisted. If you could imagine the setup, it was a huge open space with a lot of computers, probably 20, maybe even 30 little computers. A bunch of Marines would be sitting there and they would call your ticket. If you can imagine, you pulled a ticket and they would call your number. So they're like, number 122. And you, Gerardo, you'd sit down here and I'm like, hi, okay, I'm going to finish your paperwork. And you would give me your ID card and I would pull up and together we would go over your DD-214. I'd be like, is this your home record? Is this the day that you joined? Is this the day that you're expected to get out? Is these the awards that you have gotten while you've been in? And if you've deployed, is this where you deployed to? And so we would go through your DD-214 to make sure that it was a reflection of your time in service. It's a very important document. And we didn't want to make any mistakes. And so once you agreed that everything was right, then we would print it out. You would sign there's 8 different copies that would go to different parts. And you would keep copy 1 and copy number 4. And you would keep that. and your orders, and it would take a little bit depending how much changes needed to be added or removed. And then you would walk out with your paperwork, and then you would be done. And so it was a little bit of a tedious process because you can imagine for every Marine that's graduating boot camp, if you can imagine boot camp ceremonies, there's rows and rows and rows, thousands of Marines graduating on graduation day. All those Marines graduating on that day most likely have the same, it's called EAS date, which is estimated end of service, like their last day in. All those Marines that got out that day are most likely going to get out, or got in that day and graduated boot camp. The day they come in is the day they're going to come out. So that's a large amount. It's always Marines are getting out. It's a revolving door. So it was always busy there. We even had a morning crew and a night crew. Yes, 24/7. So the way that it worked, and I did both shifts. I did morning crew and night crew, depending. They rotated me around. But the way that it worked, the night crew would keep us one day ahead. So let me give you an example. So today is Wednesday, right? The night crew would be working on the DD-214s and the orders for the crew for whoever was leaving Friday, 2 days ahead. The day crew would they would not only check out their Marines that were leaving that day, so again, that were leaving Wednesday. Once we closed shop, which would be about 4:30 or 5, we then spent an extra hour and divvied up the paperwork for the Marines that should be EASing the next day to make sure that everybody's was done. So we had this long list of, let's say 200 Marines are EASing the next day. So we would divide it against all 20 Marines and be like, you need to make sure you have your Marine stuff. Do you have their orders? Do you have their 11060? Do you have their DD-214? And you made sure that everything was done. And if anything was missing in one of the boxes, it was your job to fix. If you had 5 Marines that were assigned you had to fix it before you left. And if that meant you worked till 10 p.m. to fix your 5 Marines because one was missed, you worked till 10 p.m. that night. It did not matter. So that was the hard part, that, again, it was always working, always doing work. But it, again, an amazing system, but it was just that. It was that door that never ended, that there was always somebody getting out of the Marine Corps. But I liked it.
Was it the duty station you were expecting it to be?
So yes, in the sense that it was in California. I got to do all the fun stuff. Camp Pendleton's right next to Oceanside, and man, it's lively. There's so much to do. I also, because I was at Camp Pendleton in California, I got to go to like the San Diego Zoo. I got to go to the San Diego museums, which I loved. I even got to go to Disneyland, which I really, really loved. I'm obsessed with Disney. So it was really nice that it was a place that when you did get your weekend, you could go. You could go places because it was within that appropriate radius that you could travel and go see stuff. So that was awesome. But the part that I didn't expect, I thought that it would be a little bit easier. And I hope this makes you laugh. Not that it ever happens, but I thought my job would be like 8 to 5 and then be done. That's not the case at all. I don't know if that's specifically the Marine Corps or IPAC outbound or what. There was no 8 to 5. We had PT Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so you're in formation already at 6 a.m., ready to run, ready to do whatever workout they wanted to. On Fridays sometimes was easy, and we would do football, which I wasn't good, but I'd rather do football than go run 3 or 4 or 5 miles. And so I got to learn to love football. But so that was the only part that I just didn't expect, that again, recruiters, he was like, oh yeah, it's like an 8 to 5 job. And I was like, I could do that. It was not an 8 to 5 job, but that's okay. It still was. I loved it. I wouldn't have changed my duty station for anything whatsoever. And then speaking of that, I actually got elected while I was there. So even though I was at IPAC APAM, I got TAD, which that stands for Temporary Additional Duties. I got TAD to CLR 15. It's another unit that was right next to us. And another administrative job that I got to do, which I thought was really cool, I was in the S4, and I was the Marine that was in charge of, they had a set of barracks that had to be ready for people that would come back from deployments. So it required like a lot of maintenance. It required making sure the barracks were ready for them. They were maintained, cleaned, water running, making sure they were prepared, making sure that had appropriate linen. Like it's basically, again, preparing that they don't have to worry about that they could just come home, however they got home, line up on the parade deck, and then go to a barracks and lay their head down and not have to worry about anything else. So that I did that for a very short period of time, but it was really rewarding because I never got to deploy, even though I volunteered every single time that in our unit, they're like, hey, who wants to volunteer to deploy? every time I put my list down, every time. But since IPAC belongs to the base, we're a non-deployable unit. IPAC is. So even though we still volunteered and we tried, we couldn't technically deploy unless we left that unit. So that's why I volunteered to go to a different unit. Unfortunately, I still didn't deploy, but I got to help out those that did come back from a deployment to have a place to rest their head and not worry about, is there running water? Do I have toothpaste? Do I have sheets? Do I have blankets? And so that way they could be able to make that transition between, okay, I'm here, and then they got back to their actual homes, their actual barracks. It was a transition from when they had arrived there at the air wing. It was a place to rest their head for a few days before they got back to the unit. So it was just nice to be able to help them and honor them in that way. Because again, everybody joked, but everybody's like, you even put mints on the pillows, which I did. But they're like, this is like a hotel. And I'm like, they've done so much. You know what I mean? They don't need to worry about not having deodorant and not having snacks and stuff like that. Because I would put like beef jerky and Skittles and just stuff that they could be able to enjoy, because I didn't want them to have to spend money doing stuff like that. So it was just a small little way to be able to connect to those that did deploy. It was nice. It was very humbling.
Well, it's very nice of you to do all that.
I was very grateful that they chose me to do that. So
was there something impactful while you were doing some of this documentation for the Marine Corps?
yes, that's a very good question. So something that I remember, so at IPAC, there's a room. It's called the diary room. And there, once stuff is like written and everything, it's ran on diary into a report. And I'll never forget, it didn't happen often, but it would. There was moments where Mr. Roberts, he was the gentleman that was in charge of us, he would come in and he would say, hey, we had a loss. And what that meant to us is that somebody that was overseas, because again, IPAC Outbound is helping Marines get out of the military. That includes those that had passed away. And that meant that somebody that was overseas and deployed, that they unfortunately, they died in action. And so what we would do, and something that I'm always grateful for now and I'll always remember, is that Mr. Roberts would say, hey, we need to have a moment of silence. So we would all stand up. We'd get at the position of attention. And that's it, where you're standing up, your hands are at your side, you're looking straight ahead. And he's like, we're going to have a moment of silence for this Marine. And so we would stand there for just about 2, maybe even 3 minutes. Complete silence. It didn't matter that people were, on the other side of that wall, walking in and out of IPAC Outbound, getting their orders, screaming and hooting and hollering that they got their DD-214. We would stand in silence. And it was a way to make sure that even though we were never going to meet that Marine, even though we were never going to see that casket, we were never going to attend that funeral, that even though that person was, had passed away millions of miles away, that it didn't matter, that we were still going to honor that Marine, because again, they were still our fallen brother or sister. And the best way that we could respect them is have that moment of silence. And so we would. And it's something that stuck with me, because there's different ways to be able to honor those that have fallen. You might see a veteran with a black bracelet, and it has that person's information on it that they lost. That's one way that sometimes you might see a veteran that had a loss. Other people, they might get tattoos of that person's name, the date that they lost him. But for us, it was those few moments of silence. And even now, if I know that somebody I see with that black bracelet, I look at them and I say, hey, I'm sorry for your loss. And they know that I know that it's a moment that we are still honoring them, that they're not forgotten. It's a way to be able to honor them no matter how many years, days, months that it's been. But that was really impactful for me.
So I know you said you joined in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Did that ever worry you? You said you always seek to be deployed. I know that we were at the time
We were.
In war.
We were. So it didn't worry me. That's actually, again, one of the things that gave me the joys that I wanted to serve. I wanted to be able to deploy, to be able to say that I served my country in that way. Unfortunately, it took me a while when I got out of the Marine Corps to still say that I was a Marine, to say, like, I am a Marine when I would talk to other veterans that had deployed. I felt like something of that was missing. But what I do realize is that, yeah, I didn't deploy, but I was still a Marine. That's never a title that's going to be taken from me. And I served in a different capacity that was still needed. And that's what I remind myself. But no, it didn't worry me. It just was unfortunate that I never got chosen. The Marines that they did choose from the IPAC to deploy were mostly men, which appropriately so. Female, back then in 2008, not a lot of females did deploy. Things did change, and now there's even females in combat positions in the Marine Corps, and a lot of leaps and bounds have been made for females to serve overseas, but it wasn't seen as often. More male counterparts were deployed for the administrative positions.
Were there some challenges there?
Yeah, so unfortunately, and which I don't blame them, there's a few, I want to say, like predispositions, like opinions about females in combat. Some people unfortunately think that, females can be a distraction. Some people also think that females can be the weaker sex, that, if something is required physically from us, that we can't perform equal to a male counterpart. And other things that, again, is that is a kind thing, but it's still considered almost like a negative, is that they also say that there's like big brother syndrome, that if you were standing next to me and standing next to another male Marine and we became under fire, that your natural instinct would be to defend more the female than it would be to defend the male. And it's not because neither one is capable less or more. It's just because you're inclined to protect a female. Children, those are more considered a vulnerable population. And so that was a stigma that we really had to fight, because female Marines, females have not always been in the Marine Corps. And so because of that, it's always been a challenge, and even to this day, to try to blur that it's like, hey, we go through the same boot camp as you guys. We have the same expectations as you guys. And even now, they've changed physical fitness tests. Every year, there's 2 tests that Marines go through. There's a physical fitness test, which is a 3-mile run. Now it's planks. Before, it's I think a 3-minute plank. Now it's planks. Before, while I was in, it was an arm bar hang where you grab the pull-up bar and females would hold their body up for 70 seconds. And then for men, it was pull-ups, and they would have to do a total of 20 pull-ups. Like, that was the goal. So 3-mile run, pull-ups, and then 100 contras, both the men and the women. Now I believe it's a little bit modified. And again, because they're trying to blur that line between the two sexes. Now both men and women do pull-ups in the Marine Corps. Now both the men and women, we still do the runs, but now both the men and the women, they do the planks together, and it's the same times. So that's where they're trying to say that it's like, hey, you keep saying, oh, the women, because it would said women have it easier because all we have to do is hold up our body. Like, we don't have to actually do pull-ups. They blurred that line, and now we do pull-ups. I know I don't, because I'm not in, but female Marines now, during their annual physical fitness test, they have to do pull-ups just like their male counterparts. So it's stuff like that the Marine Corps has changed over time since I've gotten out to help that divide. Another example, while I was in 2008 to 2012, the female Marines there's many different uniforms. The classic uniform that most people think of is our beautiful Marine Corps dress blues. You see a Marine, they've got blue pants. Some of them have that red stripe because they're an NCO, which is a certain rank. The beautiful black and the buttons, and then the white belt, and then the Marine Corps emblem. Gorgeous. Before, females had a different jacket while I was in. We didn't have the belts. It was a jacket that was form-fitted and a skirt, and we would wear pumps. And then we had a different cover, which cover for us is a hat, but it was a different cover. And our cover was a little bit more shaped, more feminine. Nowadays in the Marine Corps, again, to blur that line of female versus men, women now, we wear the same jacket as the men with the buckle that the men use, and the cover is the same as the men. And we wear slacks. So you see what I mean? They're trying to help no longer distinguish that it's like, hey, this female Marine can't do what this male Marine can do. So again, but when I was in, it was a little bit more distinguishable. It was a little bit more, well, a female can't do this, and a female dresses like this. And there was little small things that kind of made us a little bit different. But the Marine Corps has done a really good job of unifying us because, I've talked to a few male Marines, like veterans, and they're like, I've never seen a female Marine while I was active duty. They never saw one. And that it just depends where they were stationed. It depends on their units. But now the Marine Corps, again, is integrating. I remember, again, time and service. I hope I don't jump around too much. But after I got out of active duty, I did the reserves for a little bit. And the way that that's different, active duty is being a Marine 24/7. You're living on base. A reservist is that you go in once a month for a weekend to do a drill. And you do stuff like you work out while you're there, doing some paperwork, doing some training related to being a Marine. And I remember the unit that I got attached to when I was a reservist after I got out active duty, I was the first female to get attached to that unit. They had never had a female. It was an artillery unit. I was the first female ever. Half of them had never seen a female Marine in uniforms.
What led you also to switch from active duty to the reserve?
Great question. So after I was again with IPAC Outbound and I did CLR 15, I went back to IPAC Outbound, and by then I had picked up the rank of corporal, which is E4, and I got chosen by my chief warrant officer, which is one of the officers that was in charge of all of IPAC Outbound, as well as my mass sergeant that was as well in charge of the whole unit, to essentially be the right-hand administrator, kind of like a secretary is what I say. And I loved it. I loved scheduling appointments, making stuff, doing everything for them. That way they didn't have to think about it. Everything was ready. They're like, I need this, and boom, I already had it ready. So I really enjoyed it. But I remember while I was doing that, I was getting close to the end of my 4-year contract. The Marine Corps works in contracts. Normally it's a 4-year contract, and then you have 4 years of inactive ready reserve. You can decide to re-enlist. It's a term that we use that you decide to continue your Marine Corps career as active duty, or you can decide to no longer re-enlist, and just those 4 years of inactive ready reserve, you can do nothing with them and just be a civilian, or you can do the reserves, which is, again, as I mentioned, that once a month kind of thing. During that time, I remember I was getting my degree. So one thing that I did very unique compared to other Marines at my unit is that I chose to get my degree while active duty. I got a degree of just my general studies. I know that here at JCC.
So you did get to go to college.
I did. I got a general studies degree, which is your basics like algebra, maths, histories, like the things that you would need for like an AA. And so I got that degree, and I remember while I was getting it and I was working as their secretary, I was like, I want to do more than this. I don't want to just work as somebody's secretary. I don't want to stay in the Marine Corps. I want to keep going in my education. I didn't know what that looked like, but when my turn came to decide to re-enlist or to get out, I was like, I want to go to college. I want to go to university. I want to get a bachelor's degree. And it's not that I couldn't do that while active duty, but I was ready for that next chapter. Because again, I felt like I loved what I did, but there was something else that I wanted to do with life. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew it was something else.
Did you consider like a different MOS at the time?
Great question. So I did. I was actually thinking about combat camera because I was like, hey, so combat camera is an MOS that does deploy very often because they literally go to combat and they take pictures of those in combat for we can be able to have media, for we can be able to have other stuff that we can use. Again, for different reasons. That could be used in a video, that could be used in a marketing, and that could be used even for a memorial. If that combat camera individual happens to take a picture of somebody that passed away, that may be the last picture that they have of them alive. So again, different reasons. I went and spoke to the officer that would help you re-enlist, and they told me that that job was full, that there was no openings. And so I was like, no, that is not meant to be. I'm not going to stay in and not go deploy. I was like, I'm not going to, again, stay where I'm at. And so, yeah, it felt like a lot of doors were closing for the hopes that I wanted of deploying and staying in and deploying. So, yeah, I decided to get out, and I decided to do the reserves instead. And I liked it. It was a lot of fun, and I got my degree.
And what was the reserves? Did you move back to Kansas, or?
Great question. So I actually stayed in California. I got accepted into Cal State Fullerton. It's a little bit north from Camp Pendleton, probably about 2 or 3 hours. I got accepted in Cal State Fullerton, and the unit that was there was by Seal Beach. It was a reserve unit, an artillery unit that was there. And I just attached to that unit and I did some time with them and I loved it. It was awesome. It's nice to just see Marines on a weekend, but not have to actually like 24/7. So I could still be a student. I could still see Marines, but then go back to like a normal job of going to school. I held a job. I worked at the school at Cal State Fullerton in the Veteran Center. It was really nice. I like working with veterans. And I worked for the certifying official as her assistant. And it was really nice too because I was helping other veterans that wanted to pursue their education and use their GI Bill, which is one of their benefits when they get out honorably, to be able to go to school. And I got to meet all sorts of veterans, young, old. And it was just really nice to not lose that camaraderie of like hanging out with other veterans and meeting other Marines, but still helping people and still, of course, most importantly, getting my bachelor's degree while I was going to school and making money. So it worked out. But yeah.
Very good. So then how was our reserve unit like too? You mentioned you were the only female there. Was there any challenges when you went into training?
Yes, great question. So the reserve unit, they were really welcoming and very nice, but I could tell it was odd for them to have a female. The biggest challenge when we went to the field, because sometimes you go to the field, you do trainings and stuff like that. And I'll never forget, I explained to them, because there are very strict Marine Corps regulations for our uniform, our attire, and our appearance. For females specifically, that's one of them is our hair. Our hair has to be within a certain regulation. We have different variations of a sock bun, a twist bun of how our hair has to be pulled back. And like it even can't be like bigger than 3 inches in width or height. Like you can use like your military ID. That's how we would measure it to make sure it didn't miss that. You couldn't have like any hairs, like see how this is loose? That's considered a flyway. Like you had to have it like flat and tight and put together. So very funnily, to me it's funny, when I went to the field, the guys were like, why do you need a water bottle? I kept asking for a water bottle every single morning. And I was like, because I have to do my hair. And like, what do you mean you have to do your hair? And I'm like, I have to stay within Marine Corps regulation. I have to do my hair. And they're like, what? Like they were blown away, like flabbergasted that I had to do my hair. They thought it's because I wanted to do it. And I was like, no, the Marine Corps order states that I have to do my hair and it has to stay within regulations. I can't have any flyaways and it has to blah, blah, blah. And they're like, whoa. We'll get you your water bottle. Just whatever, go be a princess. And I was like, I'm not being a princess. But for the rest of the thing, they're like, she needs her water bottle to do her hair. So everybody was picking on me that I had to do my hair, that I had to do my hair. So it was really funny that, again, the guys are getting grimy in the field. They're keeping up with their shave, but they're dry shaving. Like it's all, they're making it happen. And then you see me over here with a water bottle, like flipping my hair down, rinsing my hair, pulling it, combing it and everything, like at 5 a.m. with the light of the Humvee. Cause I'm like, I gotta be ready for formation. Like my hair has to be ready. So I'll just never forget that they were blown away that they're like, well, now we got to pack more water next time because Lopez, because I had gotten married, so I had a new last name. It's like, Lopez needs an extra water bottle for her hair. And that was the going joke the whole time, that they were just shocked that I had to do my hair every morning for the whole week. And it's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm just following Marine Corps regulations. But even to this day, I just laugh about it, that it's like, they really had never seen a female Marine and realized that just like male Marines have a certain haircut regulation and facial grooming regulation, female Marines have grooming regulations for our hair, but they definitely had to adapt to that. And another thing they had to adapt, normally most of the guys, they have to use the restroom and they just go wherever. What that means is they had to be a little bit more attentive to be like, where's Lopez? And I'm like, I'm over here. It's like, okay, I'm going to use the restroom. I'm like, I'm going the opposite way. Okay. And like I would turn and they would go and that would be it. But they were just used to being dudes and just using the restroom wherever they want. Because again, you're in the field, but it was just really funny that they're like, where is she? Where are you? And they would like yell for me to make sure I wasn't around. So it was just fun to see. They were like, almost like, oh my gosh, is she here? Is she around? What am I doing? While I was like, what is the big deal, guys? So it was fun. They were out of their comfort zone, but I wasn't out of mine. So, but yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yes.
So then you stay in the reserves for 4 years? Or?
No, great question. I only did the reserves for 1 year. The reason why I ended up so I got my bachelor's in health science with a global studies emphasis. And part of that is a global studies emphasis. I wanted to travel and go to different countries. So I ended up going to like Kenya. I ended up going to like Chile. I went to Turkey. I went to different parts of Mexico. I went to Temoya, Mexico. I went to where else? Just lots of missionary work, because again, that was my focus, is that as somebody working in health science, I wanted to help globally. Well, part of that is because drill was every single month, I couldn't stay in the reserves and do those trips because they were long trips and sometimes they coincided when I would have drill. Even though you could work with the unit to try to like shift the days around, it just came a little bit too difficult to shift the days around with the amount of trips that I was taking overseas at that time. So in the end, it was just a decision to close that chapter. It was pretty sad. I remember it was December 2014 was my last one, and I remember I even got a plaque. All the Marines signed it, and they're like, good luck to you. We're gonna miss you, and it was really sad, but it was again totally worth it. And I closed that chapter. And then after I closed that chapter, I then left for the Peace Corps and I served in the Peace Corps. So again, I had to close that because I wanted to be overseas. And it wasn't really ideal for me to go from Nicaragua in the Peace Corps, then come back for a month and do a drill and then go back to Nicaragua. And then it just logistically, financially, there was just too many moving pieces for that. So, but yeah, it was hard to say goodbye, but it ended, I don't know if you know this, but Marines, we do something that's called Toys for Tots. And we collect from the community, from schools, and from just people that have very kind hearts, toys to give to those that don't have gifts. And so you might see it during like Christmas time. You'll see Marines like dressed up next to a box that says Toys for Tots. You might see it like at Marshall's or other stores that partner with us. And it's just really cool. That was how I ended my Marine Corps career. I remember I was in uniform. And me and another Marine, we went to school and we talked to the kids about Toys for Tots and everything. And they took a picture of me, which I didn't know. And my hair slicked back in uniform, the old uniform, the original female Marine Corps uniform from my time. And just talking to the kids and smiling. And it was a really good memory of just ending the career on such a high note of helping and serving in the community, but still, being able to wear my uniform one more time before I, close that chapter. So yeah, it was a nice way to end it.
But you seem like you continue to serve too. You said you went to the Peace Corps?
Great question. So yes, I did. I ended up joining the Peace Corps. I was in Nicaragua, so I'm bilingual. I actually speak, write, and read Spanish. And so with my degree in health science, they were looking for people that would serve overseas. My husband, he's also Spanish speaking. He's Salvadorian. I'm Mexican. And we applied and got accepted to the Marine Corps. To the Peace Corps. It's still stuck in me. I say Marine Corps a lot. And so we joined the Peace Corps, got accepted, went to Nicaragua. We absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, though, it did get cut short. My husband is still in. He got orders to be a recruiter. So we were in Nicaragua for a while, and then instead of the full 2 years of service, we had to come back earlier. And he ended up getting called to be a recruiter. But that's okay. It ended up working well because when he got called back and we both had to come back and he served as a recruiter, I actually decided to, believe it or not, I decided to go back to school, and I actually applied here at JCCC, and I got blessed. I got a job at the Veterans Center here. My boss, the wonderful Miss Kenna, who I absolutely adore. I don't know what she saw in me, but I'm blessed that she gave me a chance, and I got to work in the Vet Center here and help out veterans doing similar to what I did at Cal State Fullerton. And I helped with benefits. I was a veteran certifying official. I got to help with the JCC Veterans Club, which was the highlight. I loved it. We do like donut sales. I got to meet veterans. The club was one of my favorite times to just connect with people. We would go out together as a group sometimes, go watch movies and hang out. But I did that. But in the background, I knew I wanted to be a nurse. And so I met with the voc rehab specialist. So remember I was telling you there's different benefits that veterans might get after serving. One of them was called the post 9/11 GI Bill. Another one is called a voc rehab. So what that means is that sometimes some veterans, they get out and they get a degree, but they can't find any employment of that degree. Unfortunately, that was happening with me. My health science degree that I had gotten, the bachelor's one, it worked to join the Peace Corps, but it wasn't really working to get jobs like here in Kansas City with a health science degree. There wasn't a lot to do with that. So I spoke to the voc rehab person here at the time, and she helped me. She helped me get some benefits to go to nursing school. So I started working on the prerequisites. I did here at JCCC microbiology. I did chemistry. Oh, I had Dr. Schultz, amazing, amazing doctor. I did human anatomy and physiology here, so lots of prereqs to get into the program. And then I applied to nursing school. I got waitlisted. I didn't get in, but they did recommend that I get a job in healthcare. So I sadly left here, JCCC, and the amazing Miss Kenna, but I got a job at KU, and sure enough, that helped. I had a reference from a doctor at KU from Marillac. They have a mental health building that's specifically for the pediatric population that are like having like suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety. She gave me my recommendation, the pediatrician that's there, and I got in. And then I started nursing school. So yeah, but it was amazing. You never would have thought Marine Corps, getting a degree in health science, going to the Peace Corps, to then working here at JCCC, to then working at a hospital and getting into nursing school, and doing an accelerated program, which kicked my butt. It was a 1-year nursing program at Mid-American Nazarene. And now I'm a nurse. And I graduated during the pandemic. That was a shock. 2020, I think, hit us all really hard, but it definitely hit nursing really, really hard. But yeah, it's such a big story. And it all works out together because the Marine Corps gave me the confidence. You remember I told you at the beginning, I said, after graduating boot camp, like, working through that injury in that hip, that I was like, I can do anything. If I can make it through boot camp and I can make it through the crucible, I can do anything. That confidence has pushed me through everything, through my first bachelor's degree, through the Peace Corps, through getting my nursing degree accelerated, even through, I hope this makes you laugh, I'm a mom of 2, even through labor. I was like, I did boot camp. I can give birth to 2 kids. Like, I can do this. And it's been the foundation of who I am for so many years, that even to this day, when I come across something, it's like, man, this is hard. It's like, but is it boot camp hard? Like, is it really boot camp hard? And I'm like, no. And now I even say, like, is it as hard as giving birth? And I'm like, no. And so I can be able to use those as like my cornerstones of like, it's not that hard. Like, you can do this. But yeah, it's a very unique life. I think I've lived, for being 34, I think I've lived a lot in just a short time span. I've had lots of careers and lots of life, and I'm very grateful for it. So, but yeah, anyways.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It seems like you still carry.
I do. So this is my Marine Corps emblem. So I am very rare. I am not a Marine that has tattoos, and I say that that's rare because most Marines I know have some kind of ink, some kind of tattoo. My husband keeps telling me he has a Marine Corps emblem, and he also has a USMC, and he's like, you should get a Marine Corps tattoo. Because speaking, I remember you had asked, something of like, as a female Marine, stuff that we overcome. Even to this day, my husband and I, we can be out at Target, we can be, shopping, just somewhere out getting groceries. And my husband, because he has USMC Marine Corps tattoo, other Marines will immediately be like, oh, Semper Fi, like, hey, Marine Corps veteran, and like, say hi and everything. And I get overlooked. No one ever thinks that I'm a veteran, let alone a Marine Corps veteran. So normally I get overlooked, but my husband, because he's amazing, we've been together 13 years, he says, my wife served also. And so he always brings me into the conversation. But again, there's nothing that like really distinguished. So I normally try to wear my necklace because in your Marine, if we have good attention to detail, we will notice an eagle, globe, and anchor. We've got good eyes. But my husband has been pushing. He's like, come on, get a Marine Corps tattoo, And it's getting more and more tempting just because he's right. It does suck to be, no one notices that I'm the veteran, and I don't wear hats, so I'm not going to wear like the cool Marine Corps hat veterans. So it's getting tempting, but I don't know. I don't like needles. I know I'm a nurse, but I don't like needles. And trust me, most nurses, we don't mind giving or administering needles or working with that, but myself, I don't know. I'm good. But yeah, so yes, I definitely carry with me. And even to this day, it's still a part of my testimony of like who I am. At my job, they know I'm a veteran. So I work for Children's Mercy. So remember I told you I became a nurse. I work for Children's Mercy. I'm a pediatric nurse. I still work with kids. I love kids. And on my signature at the bottom of it, besides, of course, saying RN, it also says USMC veteran. And so it's just something that, again, I know we shouldn't be prideful, but I am proud of. And I've been able to connect to other veterans and Marines at my job. And it's just a beautiful thing. And Children's Mercy does an incredible job every year, just like JCCC. Around or on Veterans Day, they do something to make sure that they focus on the veterans that either work at JCCC. Same, Children's Mercy identifies those that want to be identified as veterans. And we have a huge ceremony. One Marine gets chosen and they bring in the Marine Corps flag. A Navy veteran brings it in, and it's a huge ceremony. And it's beautiful that this is something that's going to be part of my life for the rest of my life. And one day, I'll get to tell my kids about it. I'll get to tell them about the time that I was sweating bullets at Paris Island and getting yelled at. And
push them to another PT.
Yes. And I hope this makes you laugh. So I have a very bad habit as a Marine. My drill instructors, and again, maybe other Marines, we snap a lot. And so I snap a lot. Luckily, my husband understands it, and so I go like that. So my poor kids, speaking of like how the Marine Corps plays, when my daughter, if she's getting too close to a street or she's distracted, I snap, and I'm like, Grace. And she like looks. I'm like, eyes. And that's something that was in the Marine Corps that a lot of the times, something that in boot camp, they'd be like eyeballs. And you would say click and you would like look at your drill instructor. So my poor daughter, without even knowing it, like she's now being integrated to my like Marine Corps history that I like snap. And I'm like eyes. And she like looks. And I'm like, that's not safe. There's a car. And she's like, yes, ma'am. So like I'm teaching her yes, ma'am and no, ma'am. And so again, it's beautiful. But one day she'll understand like my little quirks of why we make our bed every morning. Like I still do that. In our house, everybody makes the bed every morning. And my daughter was like, okay, let's pull the sheets. Let's fix the blankets. Why I snap. Why we don't yell in the house. That yelling is only when we need to get somebody's attention. That it's not, we don't need to raise our voices. That it's used for specific times. So just little things that I think she's going to be like, oh, that's why you do that. Like when she's older. Right now she's 3. She won't understand nor anything. But one day I'm going to introduce her to like running cadence and what a drill instructor is and stuff like that. And I think she's going to like it. So, but yeah, it's definitely still part of my life. And it's nice I still to this day, if I see a veteran, specifically a Marine Corps veteran, I always say hello and I always introduce myself. And if it's a veteran that's of a different branch, like sometimes when I see, normally if I see like a Vietnam veteran or a Korean veteran, I know there's so few left, I will take out the time and I will tell them that I thank them for their service because they paved the way. They paved the way for benefits, for kindness and welcoming and respect that they did not get when they came back. They were treated very differently than what we are treated now. There's a sense of honor of being a veteran, and they didn't really have that. So I'm grateful. So either way, like it's just always part of my life, like always connecting to other veterans and seeing them. So, but yeah. But yes, it's definitely still with me.
That sounds really great. Is there anything else you want to add, or maybe something that was impactful in your service, or some advice or anything that?
I guess a few things. One, I don't think I mentioned, I did meet my husband while I was in, and I think that we have a very unique situation by being dual military. So we were both active duty while we were in, and then I decided to get out, and like I said, he's still in. He's a gunny now. And so he works still with his unit. He is a reservist. He still continues to do it. But something that's really impactful and I think helpful that I never thought of, we have like our own language. So the Marine Corps, it's its own group of people and how they think. And something that I'm really grateful for is that I didn't realize how much it would help our marriage, that I'm not only a dependent or just a civilian that married somebody that's in, that I can connect to him, that I understand when he's stressed out about like a physical fitness test, or he is working on, it's called a fit rep. It's what you need to pick up the next rank. When he's got certain deadlines or he has to put something into, I remember, he has a lot of reports he has to pull from a program. It's called McTIFs. And I'm still an admin Marine, so I'm still like, do you want me to help you? And he's like, yes. So I still help him, you know what I mean? So it's just cool that it really was, it brings us together in such weird ways. And something that I love, he and I, so a lot of people don't know this, but the Marine Corps was actually established November 10th, 1775 in Tuntaver. Huge part of our tradition, something that we just absolutely, every Marine knows to celebrate that day. And that's something that my husband and I, we just share, and we have a tradition every single year that we do. We will take out the time and we will share a drink, an alcoholic beverage, and we'll cut a small piece of cake. And we will listen to every year. The current Commandant of the Marine Corps gives a Commandant's address, and normally the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps is in it too. And he and I will drink our drink and cut that little, sometimes it's just a cupcake, and listen to the message. And that's just something that no one's going to take from us, that's going to be our tradition for the rest of our lives.